So here we are at 4 o'clock UK time. We're joined by a couple of people on a different time zone, actually, from America. Um, we are thrilled to have a couple of people from up until midnight last night were with Kronos, but from midnight, they are with UKG. So it's really exciting to be part of an event that is one of the first ones to be sporting their new livery under their new branding. So Kronos have joined forces with Ultimate Software to become Ultimate Kronos Group, so UKG. However, I'm delighted to introduce personally Dr. Chris Mullen, who is the Executive Director of the Workforce Institute, and he is in Colorado with UKG. And along with him is Teresa Smith, who's the Senior Manager for HCM and Strategic Advisor, again with UKG. So with no further ado, I'd love to hand over to Chris, and their focus today is about preparing your workforce for the future. So what a lovely upbeat way to finish our sessions for today. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. We're happy to be here. For us, it's the morning or the afternoon, and happy to be here for your last session of the day. And hopefully, and I know it'll be intriguing and worth your time. Teresa and I have been speaking on the future, preparing that workforce. What does it mean? What should you be looking for? We get to do this in a lot of different industries, retail being one of them. And with that, key objectives for today, they're really about how do we understand, when we talk about this future workforce with the pandemic that's happening, how do we really understand our workforce? How do we prepare them for the future? How do we as a business prepare for the future? So we want to hone in today on employee expectations around today's world of work. We want to give you a good understanding of what we're seeing. Also, how can HR impact that employee experience? That is super important. We believe that the employee experience is the cornerstone of a great business, of how do we prepare for the future of our workforce. And so you'll hear us talk a lot about the employee experience, a lot about the employee journey and moments that matter. And we're going for the retail industry and what we're seeing and what we think could be very important for you all. And then how to use technology to drive that employee experience. It's one thing to understand it philosophically, but we have to put it into practice. And there are low cost ways, there are cost ways to do, there's efficient and inefficient ways to do that. And so we want to kind of set that level for you all go through this. And and that, for you in retail, it's about how do we drive engagement with our workforce? Productivity is a big deal when it comes to retail. Right now we're seeing, obviously, how do you retain top talent? How do you rehire top talent? Um, Also, in addition to that, how do you develop those folks because of what's going on, and how do you attract new candidates as well, with the holiday up, and I'm sure a ramp up of hiring is going to be happening soon. As we do that, I want to set the stage with a story. So when I was a manager, this is probably, we're going on 10 or 15 years ago, I was hiring an individual for a position, entry level position, but it was at a university. So the requirements were very high. You had to have a master's degree, and so it was a high requirement job because this person lived rooms with the students in the residence halls. And how this relates is, I hired this person, and there when I hired her and when she started, like it was a good month and a half, because we asked them to move across the country to come work for us. Um, so there's this period of time where they're on an in between, and like any other candidate, I don't know about you all. I know I have felt this way, and when I've taken a new job, you're constantly wondering, did I make the right decision? It's the right thing for me. This new job I just accepted. I'm leaving a lot of times, going to this new place of work. I ended up, when she applied for the job and when she was hired, is that her birthday was over this period. And so what I ended up doing was, um, I sent her an email, and I sent an email to the entire department, a couple hundred people, and said, look, it's so and so's birthday. She's 3 weeks. I would love to have an outpouring of support, hellos, welcomes, happy birthdays to her. So please take a minute, send her an email. She got such an influx of email from people she was going to start working with that years later, this job is usually like a 3-year churn, 4-year churn, 5. And I said, how come you have stayed so long? And she said, one, I knew this was the right place when that happened prior to me starting. It was such a warming gesture, that it made me know this was the best place to work for me at the time. And we had to prove that over those years, but we did. And so this was a moment in her life that mattered to her, that actually created a longer job that was a quick burnout, because of the long hours. And so as we go through this talk today, as this fireside chat with Teresa and I, um, in, but we really want to hone in on how do we create moments that matter, positive ones, because if it's not positive, if you think it's neutral, then it's negative. It has to be positive for it to have a great impact, because negative happened as well. And to set here's a quick, just from less than a year ago, for employer trusted institution. And you'll see here that 3/4 of you trust their employer to create a physically safe and health environment. And I think in retail, you all are seeing that as well. Employees want a healthy working environment with the pandemic going on. They want to be physically, they come back to work. But this is here to show you that you have, power, influence over your employees, and they're looking to you as an institution, as a business, more than government, more than media, right? More than NGO. So this hopefully, sparks a little bit of, oh, we've got to do better, because none of us are perfect, and it's a constant improvement. Teresa's going to set the stage with some commonalities that we're seeing across the working world. Of people work, maybe some career stages they're in. So this gives you a frame of mind of where your employees currently are.
Yeah, definitely, Chris. I mean, I think when it comes to our work and why we work, there are these commonalities, right, that we all share. And I think the first thing to think about is we're all here to make a living. And I think we can all agree that we want to get paid for the work that we do. And, Chris, I think we also want to have access to the benefits that are available to us and really have a sense of security in the workplace. And because our personal lives are just as important, and I might say, if not more, right, than our work lives, our work needs to support our way of life. And next, we want our work to be fulfilling and have that flexibility to pursue our passions, whatever they may be. And we also want to be challenged so that we can grow in our career, and we want to be recognized for the work that we do. And I think we also need to have social interactions where we can build relationships with people who share our common interests. And we want to have a sense of belonging in the workplace. And the important thing to point out here is that we expect our employers and our managers to offer it to us. So now that we've really talked about some of these commonalities of why we work, Chris, let's talk a little bit about the different stages of that employee career cycle. So I think there's these commonalities that every employee has as they move through their career. So let me give you a quick example. An employee who is early in their career, they may be focused in on things like learning about the company, getting acclimated, going through orientation. But once they've been in their role for a little while, they may begin to explore and look for new ways to further develop their career. So at this stage, typically we see employees building more confidence in their role and really in building relationships throughout the organization. So, as employees advance a little bit further into that career, they start to establish that specialty of area of work, why they got hired, and really build that credibility across the organization. So, as a result, these employees are now more empowered to do the work that they were really hired to do. So once they've established themselves in their role, this is when we typically, Chris, will see people really inspire others. We may see staff members becoming mentors or coaches, and they may even decide at this stage to become leaders for the organization. So they progress a little bit further down the path here and they start working towards their retirement. And at this stage, this is where they're really comfortable in their role, or they might start shifting some of their priorities so that they can prepare for alternative career choices down the road. So the important thing to take away here on this screen is that these stages often blend together. So you may have employees who are a little more advanced in their career, but maybe they take on a new role, or they move to a new location or department or store. You could find these employees now revisiting all of these various different stages throughout their career path. So we've gained a little bit of understanding around these different stages of our career and really why we work. So let's spend a little bit time now and really talk about how we can truly understand the whole employee. So I think, understanding why we work and those various career stages are really only part of knowing our employees. In fact, I think there's many more variables with employees than what we may actually realize. There's this personal side and a professional side to all of us, and they're closely intertwined. So
Mhm.
keeping it all in balance, Chris, I mean, it can really be a challenge. So do you agree about how important it really is to see and understand the whole employee?
Yeah, Teresa, you know this, but I've spent quite a bit of my time, most of my PhD research, 9 years of it has been on work-life balance, work-life negotiation, and the use of mobile technologies. Firmly believe that there's a spillover effect. If you don't have a good day at home, it can spill over to work and vice versa. But we do, as we continue forward on this journey of the business evolution and evolving, have to take into account um, the whole employee. And the employee is not just someone who, or if that's how you're treating them, then you're not going to be retaining top. They're going to go to a place where they are appreciated. They are their whole self is taken into account. Um, just all of these things that happen at work, the schedules. Maybe they're a manager, they're just an employee, or they're a worker. But there are other things that are happening in their life, career, the health. They may have kids, they may be caring for a parent, and these days we really have to take this stuff into account. I mean, we were just, for instance, my my internet may be loud. I had to go upstairs and tell all 4 kids to, because they're all being homeschooled right now, because we're not back in person. We have to take this into account as we look into this new world of work, this new world of that we're currently in. And then, in addition to just there's these things in the back about, right? There are other things happening in their lives that we know is a part of their identities or their personalities, right? And so we would behoove ourselves as a business to take the whole employee into account.
Yeah, Chris, I think that is so critical to understand that whole employee. And I think as HR leaders, right, we can really create a better employee experience, especially during these times of uncertainty, by really understanding not only the employee, but also the industry trends that are affecting our companies. In fact, according to a Gallup study that was done, the employee experience is truly a journey that the employee takes with your organization. So this covers all the interactions the employees has with your company before, during, and even after their tenure. So I think it's really important to create this experience that can help organizations attract, develop, and retain the workforce to really drive the business forward. And the employee experience is comprised of what Chris and I call a series of moments, or the moments that matter. And it really involves three main areas. There's the physical experiences, and this is about the employee's workplace environment. So this could be anything from a break room, the facility, how prepared you are from a safety perspective when employees are returning back to work. It can even be the parking lot for some organizations. And then there's this human side or this human experience that's related to the employees' interactions that they have with others, such as the relationships that they may have with other employees, their managers, colleagues, and even your customers, right? That's really important. And then finally, there's this digital experience, and that's really related to the opportunities and the tools that allow the employees to perform their jobs. And I think with more and more people working remotely, these lines between work and life are getting a lot less clear. And Chris, I know, you touched on this, but work-life negotiation, right, is extremely important. Did you want to touch on that?
The idea that we're all in a different season of life, whether we have children now or they're grown. Even within that season of life, we have to negotiate every day. Do I go to a kid's sporting event? Am I able to flex my schedule from a retail space? Can I flex my schedule so that I can attend a doctor's appointment or a kid's event or something like that? So we're constantly negotiating, and I think businesses and companies can help us with that, through technology, through flexible scheduling, so I don't have to call out from my shift, but I've already flexed it weeks prior, so that maybe I've swapped it with another coworker. There's a lot of different things I think that can happen there.
Yeah, definitely. And, when you think about the entire workforce, right, it's a mix of employees, supervisors, you may have hourly versus salaried employees. And we talk about some of the commonalities earlier, but what do you need to do to be successful, right? So the employees, they're looking for something very specific, like Chris mentioned. They need that flexibility that allows them to work their way. If you think about your employees, most of them are walking around with a mobile device in their hand of some sort. So they want that same type of feel that they have at home as they do at work. And for your managers, right? They need those tools to help them to work smarter, that provides them with data so they can make critical business decisions. It may be, like Chris mentioned, a scheduling opportunity to make sure that people are fully staffed to run the stores out there. And they need that insight to help improve productivity and help them to control their cost. And from an executive standpoint, well, they need visibility into the entire organization so that they can make better business decisions and really drive the business forward. So how can we address these moments for all of the employees? I think it's about taking a really good look at the employee's journey to help you to better identify these key moments that truly matter to your employees so that you can prepare them with those tools that they are expecting. Because these moments really do matter to your employees. And this is an important thing here to note. They shape the view of the company. So think about your company brand, how that's being broadcast out into the community, and it really influences how they contribute. So when an employee encounters a moment that matters to them personally or impacts their job performance anywhere on their employment journey, it can have a negative impact. But Chris and I are going to talk about some ways that you can deploy technology to make a difference between frustration and elation when it comes to your employees. So, Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I've been in places where I've worked where I've had negative moments that matter that have made me want to leave, or I have been in other places that even the smallest thing have made such a positive impact on my journey that I would do anything for that company. And one way I used to explain this when I did a lot more consulting on the side was, if there was a light on in the building, on like the sixth floor, and your employee walked day and looked up and saw that it was on, would they walk back in and turn it off for you? If they have a great relationship with the company, their manager, positive experiences, they're probably going to be really worried. They're going to go turn it off. They're going to do something out of the normal to do it. If they've had a negative, they're going to say, the heck, I'm on my time now, right? And they're going to leave, and they're not going to do that extra step. And so we want to create those moments so that the employees, they'll have their best interests in mind as an organization, and then they'll feel right. And so I think it's important now where we are in this time, maintaining employing is one of those moments that maybe used to matter less. I don't know if it mattered less, but maybe we weren't as keen to it as it's a must have. It's got to be really good. We've got to have, I know in the retail space, we're seeing the shields for the cashiers, PPEs with the masks, social distancing markers, one-way aisles, hand sanitizer, counters at the front. I mean, I remember when I worked in retail, and I was at a retail store close at the front. I was the greeter, but now the greeter is also a counter. So you're counting how many people are coming in the store for capacity reasons. So we have definitely some of the responsibilities of the job in retail, in all industries. And while you see on the screen here that workers are demanding more from their employers, but employers need more from their people as well. And while it looks like a lot of these are similar and they're the same, they're pretty close to it. Safety is number one. Flexibility is humongous. That was big before the pandemic. That's how you were recruiting top talent, was the flexibility that you could offer. So there has to be trust and transparency now, whether that's through communication or things like that. But I really want to jump into the employee journey and really show the audience, dive deep into one or two, and really see and show them how you can take just one moment, or one place on the journey, and then make it into a moment that matters for them. So here on the screen, here are just some of the key points on an employee's journey. We've color coded them to see if they were daily or weekly or monthly. So you can kind of see these are some points that your employees touch the business, and it's a really great opportunity for business to create this positive moment for them. From a retail perspective, workforce management is probably the foundational aspect, right? How are you scheduling? How are you shift swapping? What are the schedules looking? Probably the lifeblood of your business, because you don't want to over schedule labor, because then your costs are going up. You want the right labor at the right time. And so that's why we think the moment workforce management is probably good for us to kind of discuss here. So we'll go with something as simple as, viewing the schedule. And if we view the schedule, here's this moment. I'm viewing the schedule as an employee, but here I'll take the role of the employee. Here are my pain points. My pain points are, is really, the accuracy. There could be accuracy issues. I could have difficulty accessing it. How am I accessing? Do I have to come into the store to get a piece of paper, or is there something online where I can look at? Is it difficult to get to? What's the maintenance of that? If I would like to switch, if I would like to have a different schedule, what are my options? And then information. And again, the flexibility is key here. Some businesses may not be as agile or flexible as others. And so that would be a pain employee. Teresa, what about for HR?
Yeah, I think for HR and managers, you got to ensure that you have the right coverage. And so scheduling becomes critically important, especially with folks and companies ramping up to come back to work. Some retail organizations have shut down. So the employees have to have access to the scheduling, like you talked about. Maybe it's from a mobile device. And they need a way to communicate to their team or their managers or even HR. And think about this for a second, Chris. If I get sick or I've been exposed to COVID-19, or if someone else has been sick and they've been exposed, I would expect as an employee that I would be notified instantly. So how does HR, how does managers do that in a short amount of time, right? So oftentimes they need technology to help them to do all the heavy lifting across the organization in these type of situations.
Yeah.
I think if I need to drop a shift, maybe I have a family member that is sick. I need to be able to quickly open up my mobile device, drop my shift,
Yeah.
and then it notifies the manager or HR in the organization with the type of skills and requirements that are needed for the position that I'm in so that they can backfill that and make sure that there is proper coverage. Because, like you said, it does control labor cost. And if you don't have that quick insight into information, you may be losing out on opportunities to ensure that the store or retail location is making the right amount of money going forward.
Right. Right. And that's a great point there, Teresa. There's a lot that we can put into place to make this a positive moment for our employees. And it is something as simple as what's how do they get their schedules, and how do we just make this small piece of communication so that they may not enjoy it, but they notice it. They notice that it's not difficult anymore. It's not arduous. I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. I would like to I want to more here, Teresa. Um, Attesting hours is a big deal now, right? For many reasons. So if we even take this point on the journey, attesting to hours, maybe you're having your employees attest to their health and well-being. Now, maybe that is a compliance issue that you have to do. So this could be a very difficult process. Are you having them come in on a clock and doing that, where everyone's touching the same thing? That could be a safe. As an employee, I may feel that way. Um, Difficult. I could, if it's not automated, am I remembering to even attest to the question? And maybe it's unclear of what I really even need to do. So if it's not automated, it's difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And if you think about it from an HR or a manager perspective, right? You got to have some kind of processes in place to find out what's really going on with your employees. And you talked about safety earlier, and one of the things that a lot of retail organizations are doing today is putting in psychological safety for their employees. And a lot of them are using attestation to set up quick questions. Have you been exposed to COVID-19? Has anybody in your family been exposed? And that gives you the ability to track that information. And, Chris, it reminds me of something that technology can also allow for contact tracing,
Yep.
which does allow for reporting exposure audits, right, to find out if someone has been exposed. Then they know who they've come in contact with, and it keeps the organization psychologically safe because they know their employers are on top of it. And
Yeah.
it also keeps the organization informed so that they can provide proper coverage for those employees that may be out for an extended period of time.
That's true. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that can be done, right? There's a lot of things that can be done to help correct a lot of these issues. I think you're right on, and folks can see them there. The compliance, mobile's a big deal right now. Most folks have a phone, a smartphone. Um, and the numbers keep going up on everyone who continues to get them. And so that's a big way to kind of get over a lot of this, the automation piece, the mobile. It kind of allows people to get over that. It gives them that psychological safety because it's your own device.
Yeah, definitely. And that takes it not just to attestation, but even for clocking in and clocking out through mobile. Some organizations are doing that, because the fear of spreading germs right through any type of hand device for clocking. So that is a great opportunity there for organizations to do that. And then to set up those attestations. Did you wash your hands after a break? That may be something, especially during retail, to again promote that psychological safety within the company.
Exactly, exactly. Teresa, I'm going to put it on here for the key moments that matter. I think, with about 15 minutes left, we're going to do some questions and probably, take this home from a finishing standpoint, in the sense that you want to talk about, like, after you do this from a moments that matter, what does that look like? You know, how do we go from there?
Yeah.
People should be considering all the moments, I think.
I agree with you, Chris, 100%. I think, everyone on this call, this is really an opportunity to own that employee experience and create a compelling experience. Not just, hey, I'm coming to work, right? I've hired you in, you're a great hire, but really own that experience throughout and look at it from a holistic standpoint from the time that you decide to recruit. Chris talked about retaining and attracting top talent during these times. Look at your recruiting process, see how it looks. And then once you have hired someone in, what does your onboarding process look like? And then how do you keep those employees engaged once they are part of the organization? And then to continue to develop and retain those individuals is another key area, all the way to offboarding. And I think owning that experience throughout is really critical. So, Chris, how do we get there? We've talked about all these great ideas, but how do we really get there?
Yeah, and this cycle can happen quickly.
Yes.
You know, so I think, how do we get there? This is one find right before this that we wanted to put out there to folks. There is a relationship between the HR technology, which I think can be a really good solution because it gives managers and employees the margin to then do other things. With HR tech, you can automate processes, you can make them cleaner, you can make sure the compliance is adhered to. You mentioned contact tracing is one of the newer things. But when it comes to organizational agility, 90% of firms in a study that was done by Lighthouse Research claim to be future ready, said that HR tech enabled them to get there. And so we do need to understand that revolution, and it's not the one we talked about years ago or even 6 months ago. It's a must-have now. And folks may go, we just don't have the money, and we don't. There's a lot of concerns when it comes to HR tech. I would say is that get a good ROI, because a lot of times good ROI will show you where you're actually leaking money that you didn't know, whether that's labor costs, inefficient processes that are manual now. There's a lot of ways, I think, to pay for technology. When I was a practicing HR director,
Yeah, and I'll just kind of wrap up what Chris was talking about here, right? It's so critical from a technology standpoint, and I think also having the necessary components of your work and having initiatives to identify risk and notify employees in a timely manner is critical for that technology piece. And we did mention earlier the attestation and the schedules around that employee journey. So, there are ways to really manage your employees' safety and well-being. And we talked about the contact tracing tool as being one of those components, but these types of tools, technology, right, can really help you to identify who you may have been exposed to, as I mentioned earlier, to COVID, and set up some workflows that really help you to route and track your employees and keep things up to date. So I think the other thing that we'll mention here is that you're able to really personalize technology for your employees. So we know every company operates a little bit differently. So putting your best practices in place and utilizing technology along the way is a great way to do that. So all of these become very powerful tools for the organization and do provide that psychological safety that we talked about. So the final thing I'll just wrap up here with is, we talked about how do you get started on this. I think it's really taking an employee-centric approach and looking at the employee journey and just finding opportunities along that journey where you can make improvements and make the employee part of the discussion. And then once you've identified along that journey that Chris was showing earlier, personalize that, right? Make the employee the heart of the design. And don't just look at each process, right? We said look at it from a holistic view from the very beginning of the employee's journey all the way till the time that they offboard will help you to really make it a personable experience for the employee. And having real-time access to information can really help you along the way, as well as providing that technology to back it up. So just as a kind of a homework assignment, if you will, over the next couple of days, if you want to just really get to know your employees, some retail organizations may have 5 or 10,000 plus employees. So if you have a smaller amount, it'll be a lot easier to get to know what's really important to them. But if you have a larger group, you might want to divide it up into departments or even divisions or store locations. And gathering this type of information can help you to identify some really critical pieces. I would say the first one is, what are they looking for? What's driving them? Why would they leave the organization? And then the other thing that you can look at is, what are some of their pain points? What's really standing in the way of their performance, or maybe wanting to look for another job? This will help you to identify where you may have some gaps or inefficiencies, and to really engage them into the process. So, Chris and I think he lost connection here, but we really want to thank you for this time, and we want to go ahead and just open it up for some questions now.
Hi, Teresa. I appreciate Chris was in full flow when we lost him. Just one question. Was Chris going to move on to anything else? He did a great job of sort of carrying on for him. Was he going to move into any other areas, or are you happy that everything has been said that you guys wanted to say?
Yeah, I think we've pretty well covered everything that we were going to go over.
Okay, lovely. There's one sort of question that's certainly come in, and it's very pertinent at the moment. So let me just reiterate this question, which is, how can retailers justify the investment in such technological solutions when many are struggling at the moment? Because obviously budgets are pushed in certain different directions. How would you tackle that question?
Yeah, that I hear that question a lot. It's a really tough one, but we have to make sure that the solution that's being looked at or offered up for decision making delivers a strong return on investment. And I think that's where organizations really need to look at, what does your journey look like today? What do you want it to look like in the future? And then really look at the investment that you're making and the return that it has on the organization, to be able to quantify how much time and money that you're maybe wasting, and where you could reinvest that money into technology.
Yeah, Chris, welcome back.
Thank you.
Just while you were away, I say very happy for you to go back into the flow that you were in. Teresa did a great job of dovetailing into what you were saying. But in the meantime, we did have a question that came in about justifying the investment in the technology when so many people are struggling, organizations are struggling, and clearly putting budgets in different directions. Teresa clearly has just answered some of that. I don't know whether you heard that, but I wondered whether you have a view on that answer as well.
Yeah, it's actually something I actually went through at my previous position when I was director of HR, trying to justify upgrading HR technology. It was a good ROI is a great place to start. I was at a place where we were still on premises with ours, and so there was a lot of hardware savings as well, plus time savings. We forget how much time it takes to keep up to date our HR tech software. Although newer softwares now are pushing updates quicker, sooner. They should be more like your apps. As you saw, I got an update in the middle of a webinar that got pushed and I automatically got reset on my computer. Luckily, I saw it 2 minutes before coming and let Paul and Teresa know. I mean, but it's kind of where we are with technology now. And so from an ROI standpoint, we have to take into account even something as simple as, how much paper are we spending when we give a packet to our new employee and say, hey, fill this out. Here's your onboarding packet, right? I remember doing that with college students. I had asked my HR group, how do we onboard our newly hired employees? And a lot of them were college students. They said, oh, we hand them this stack of paper. I was like, I said, what do they look like when you give them that stack of paper? They look at the paper and go, what are you doing? Like, they want it on their phone. They want it on their computer. Yeah. They want the technology. And by doing that, when I went forward with the technology, we were able to alleviate not just for the new employee, that stack of paper, but now I've got HR employees who don't have to print it out, who don't have to staple it together, who now we can make that an automated process, and we freed up some of their time. It created margin for them to go do other things and more important things like build the relationship with the employees and things like that. So there's a lot of upside, I think, to HR tech if you don't have it or if you're in need of a serious upgrade.
Yeah, and upgrades are good. You've come back with reception far better than we had all the way through.
Oh, good.
um, but I suppose particularly for our audience, how would you relate it particularly to the retail setting? I think you've alluded to it some way through your presentation, so thank you for that. But if you were to summarize it, what's particularly interesting for our retailers who are watching at the moment?
Yeah, I really, and I'll let Teresa chime in when you need to or want to. But I think from a retail perspective, safety right now is first. I think they know that. But how do we then comes how do we schedule folks in a timely manner? Are we doing A/B shifting? How are we doing contact tracing from a retail perspective? With the holidays, a few months away, my assumption is that retail is actually going to start that revenue earlier, is what I'm starting to see. Even with the ads are going into the stores in my area, we're seeing holidays starting way sooner. Halloween candy for us in the U.S. I saw in August, which was unheard of. And I've got a 5-year-old, so you seeing Halloween candy at 5 years old, and it's August. They're like, "Great, Halloween's around the corner," and I'm like, "No, we got to wait 3 more months. It's just here in the store." But I get it. We're retailers. My assumption is retailers are worried about, does the pandemic come back? So we have to ramp up sooner, and that includes the hiring, the onboarding. Are you bringing back talent, or are you hiring new talent? That's a great decision that needs to be made. And then the labor costs, having a scheduling system, something with workforce management kind of helps you through that, so you're not bringing in too much labor when you shouldn't be. Teresa?
Yeah, just a couple of things to add to that. I agree with you 100%, Chris, that the psychological safety, the physical safety of employees, I think in retail especially, is top of mind, right? There's so much exposure there. So the contact tracing, like you mentioned, has been really a hot topic, if you will, for retailers out there, to be able to track that, report on it. The other thing, I think, where technology, HCM or human capital management technology, combined with the workforce management, comes into play is, we don't know when the next crisis may take place, right? So it's being prepared, having the insight into data to be able to quickly flex and make decisions for your business, and to really help you to build a continuity plan, right, going forward. So, all of these variables come into play, and they really begin to paint a pretty incredible picture of the organization overall, so that you can drive the business forward during these times of uncertainty or difficulty, if you will. The other thing, I think, is the experience of our employees, right? So a lot of people are coming back. What does that experience look like? How do they feel coming back into
Yeah.
the workplace after a shutdown? And how can we better prepare them and provide them with those tools that they need to really perform their jobs? And also giving the managers the insight into their labor and their labor cost as well.
And I
Yeah,
really and I think it's good to point out, the folks on this call, you're on this webinar, you're trying to learn. That's why you're here, right? And so you have this ability that you want to do better. So my thought is, you probably want to be an employer of choice. And so one of the ways to get there, we've talked about it, is flexibility, because there are folks where their life domain, what's happening on outside of work, has changed. Whether it's with schooling, maybe their kids are fully virtual, maybe the schools aren't open, maybe the daycare. Like I alluded to, I've got 4 kids in the house plus myself who are all on video right now, at this very moment. So things like that have changed. So how do we become more flexible and agile for our employees so that they continue to work with us? Maybe it's something as simple as they now work at multiple locations in retail. Um, they're not just dedicated to one location. Maybe there's another location that's nearby where they can split their hours. In fact, from an HR standpoint, that would be a really interesting experiment. I'll use that term loosely, because you may see that this employee who is disenfranchised before, and now they're sharing locations, may be super happy. One, because they're getting more hours, or the hours that they need. Two, you may find out that that previous manager may not have been as good as you thought. And that's why that person was disenfranchised. Just something to think about.
Yeah, Chris, you made me think of something. I mean, this is all about perspective, right? These employees are now coming back after a really difficult time, and it's all about perspective and how they see the organization, because that starts building the brand or the culture, right? And their idea of what the brand and the culture is and what it really should be. So I think that flexibility that you talked about is critical, to be able to be flexible and nimble during these times, because when employees come back and they're happy, you're going to retain those good workers, and you're providing them the flexibility to keep that work life in balance. And a lot of retailers out there are struggling right now, and they're struggling with their brand reputation as a result of how COVID was handled. So this is a prime opportunity, if you will, to really look at all these areas to become that employer of choice, where organizations are seen in the community as that top company where employees do want to work and stay.
And everyone can do it. No one is perfect, right, at this moment. Like, no one did it perfectly. Everyone can improve, and that's kind of what we wanted to get at with the moments that matter that we talked about today.
Yeah, and for fear of wanting to close you down, because we could talk for an awfully long time, but that seems a really appropriate time to conclude, because not only on a timing basis, but it pulls together so many of the threads of what we've been talking about through the whole course of today. Understanding the whole employee, which was one of your main key points. It has been a theme of our well-being and engagement and leadership themes that we've had. Treating, one size doesn't fit all. So, treating everybody individually is so important. And those moments that matter, your phrase, it's a lovely way of looking at things to ensure that everybody is treated in the way that's appropriate to them in these very different, extraordinary times. So, Teresa, Chris, thank you so very much for your contributions. It's been really interesting to hear your view on things, and clearly your expertise shining through. So we very much appreciate your input this afternoon. Have a good rest of your days. And if you'll bear with me just one moment, I would like to thank our audience very much for your time. It's been a really, really great day. The summary of the day for me has been incredible input from people who all have individually lived through this pandemic. We continue to do so, obviously, but all the contributions that we've heard of people making their way, learning as they go, but all contributing towards an HR agenda that is fit for purpose for their organizations, fit for purpose for their particular colleagues. And hats off to all our HR colleagues, all our partners who are making such a great difference to our community. So thank you to all of you for doing that. Thank you for everybody for contributing, attending. It's been a wonderful day to listen and learn. And we really look forward to hearing from you, I hope, next year in person, maybe. There is one more treat we have for you. So I did a pre-record of an interview with Helen Dickinson, who is the Chief Executive of the British Retail Consortium. And her interview is sitting on the Retail Bulletin website right now, where she summarizes the work that she's been doing with retailers and her view of retail going forward. So please go and visit that. And I hope that you enjoy that and have a really good, positive rest of 2020 and into 21. So until then, stay safe, stay well, and be prosperous. So goodbye, and thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. Goodbye.